laying the groundwork. They continue to make major moves. Now the talks are Kelsey Plum is on the trade block. They're looking to move off of Kelsey Plum. She's only under contract for this season. They are so bad to the point where she might not want to come back, and they don't want to just lose her for nothing. They could be gaining assets through trading Kelsey Plum that could help them.
What you are about to read is not speculation. What you are about to witness is not a rumor manufactured in the dark corners of sports media. What is unfolding right now in real time behind closed boardroom doors, inside secured practice facilities, and across encrypted executive communication channels represents the single most consequential organizational chess match in the entire history of professional women's basketball. To truly understand the magnitude of what the Los Angeles Sparks are currently engineering behind closed doors, you cannot simply look at the surface-level moves being made in public. You cannot simply read the press releases, absorb the carefully managed media narratives, or accept the diplomatic non-answers being delivered at press conferences by coaches who are desperately trying to appear calm, while their organizational foundations crack beneath their feet. You have to look deeper. You have to examine the financial architecture. You have to study the pattern of decisions. You have to follow the money, track the assets, and understand that everything happening right now inside the Los Angeles Sparks organization is not accidental, not reactionary, and absolutely not coincidental. This is a blueprint, a coldly calculated, resource-heavy, long-term blueprint designed with one singular purpose in mind. And every single move being made is a deliberate piece of that larger design. Let us start with the most important piece of context that the mainstream sports media continues to either overlook or deliberately minimize. The Los Angeles Sparks have missed the playoffs for 5 consecutive seasons. 5 straight years of organizational stagnation, roster mismanagement, and front office instability that has left one of the most historically significant franchises in women's basketball stranded in irrelevance, while the rest of the league has evolved rapidly around them. For any other franchise in any other era, 5 consecutive playoff misses would simply be a story about a struggling team trying to find its way back to respectability. But the Sparks are not operating in any other era. They are operating in the Caitlyn Clark era. And in the Caitlyn Clark era, every decision carries exponentially higher stakes, exponentially greater commercial implications, and exponentially more long-term consequences than anything the WNBA has experienced.
Dang, the LA Sparks are going to end up getting Caitlyn Clark. He wasn't pulling it out of thin air, and you see them making moves as we speak. You saw them go and sign Kate Martin. Now, take a look at this. Head coach Lynn Roberts is going to get fired. I'm just putting it out there. I'm letting y'all know now. I know she's going to get fired. She knows she's going to get fired. Kelsey Plum's about to get traded. It's a bunch going down. Take a look here. This is Lynn Roberts. They asked her about her job security, being that the GM just got fired. You're going to want to stick around. I got a bunch in this one. Go ahead.
Well, I don't think we underachieved last year, and this year's still going. We tripled our wins last year from the year before. I think, for where we want to get, that's not where we want to be. But, tripling wins from one year to the next in my first year, I don't think that's underachieving. This year, we have not hit our stride. We've played one game with everybody on our roster healthy. We've been injured all year. Hopefully we can get KP and Cam back. Our whole system's designed.
Before. The Sparks ownership group understands this reality with a clarity that their recent public-facing organizational chaos might obscure. They understand that the next 2 to 3 years represent what may be a once-in-a-generation opportunity to completely reposition their franchise at the absolute center of the most commercially explosive moment in women's sports history. And they are willing to make the hard, unpopular, and organizationally painful decisions necessary to seize that opportunity before the window closes. That understanding is precisely what is driving everything you are currently watching unfold. The Los Angeles Sparks have quietly, methodically, and with absolute surgical precision begun constructing the framework of what insiders are already calling the most ambitious franchise rebuilding operation the WNBA has ever seen. And at the center of this unprecedented construction project sits one singular name that has fundamentally transformed the economics, the culture, and the global commercial appeal of women's professional basketball. Caitlyn Clark. The question is no longer whether seismic change is coming. The question is how violent, how swift, and how permanently transformative that change will be when it finally arrives. Because every move being made right now, every executive decision, every trade conversation, every coaching evaluation, every facility investment, and every quiet conversation happening behind closed.
I'm not even close to thinking that we are underachieving at all.
Now, she knows her job is on the line. She's about to get fired. The LA Sparks are 10-12. They're not going to make the playoffs again under her. She knows she's on the way out. Take a look at this. Sparks coach shuts down brutal season. And this is the key part where she tried to say, oh, we're one game out of the playoffs. It says that's the goal, the plan. We'll get healthy. I'm not buying into the narrative that we're having some brutal season. This is a process. We've had adversity. Lynn Roberts is going to get fired, you guys. I'm letting that be known right now. And they are looking to move Kelsey Plum. You got all the fans already blasting Lynn Roberts. Now, I'm telling you the moves that they are continuing to make. Take a look at this here. The LA Sparks practice facility in El Segundo construction update. State-of-the-art facility expected to open in 2027. So they're going to have a brand new facility here in Los Angeles. And this is going to be big because Caitlyn Clark is going to have, she's coming from a brand new state-of-the-art facility in Indiana that they built. She's also going to be in one when she eventually gets to LA if this thing goes down. Now, that is another move that they're making. New facilities. They're going to get a new coach, a new GM. They're going to bring in a whole new infrastructure around this deal. I'm telling you, man,
those doors is pointing toward one destination. The news that the Los Angeles Sparks are actively exploring trade options for five-time All-Star guard Kelsey Plum sent immediate shockwaves through the basketball community. And on the surface, that reaction is entirely understandable. Kelsey Plum is not just a talented basketball player. She is a franchise-level talent, a proven scorer, a veteran leader, and the kind of player that most organizations would build their entire competitive strategy around without hesitation. So why would the Sparks consider moving her? Why would any franchise in their right mind voluntarily place a player of Plum's caliber on the trade block? The answer to that question reveals everything about the direction the Sparks...
It would make sense to at least hear what other teams are saying. The answer is still ultimately no.
What team would go to get Kelsey Plum right now when they could just wait?
Indiana could make the move. Well, Indiana might not make the move, but a winning team could make the move. A Golden State Valkyries could use a Kelsey Plum. You get a bunch of picks and young assets from the Valkyries, and then you use those picks and assets to go and get Caitlyn Clark.
Because like initially, I think quick shout out to Hunter Cruz, who did like a trade piece not too long ago, mentioned the Golden State Valkyries as a Kelsey Plum team. And I was like, you know what? Would be a fascinating fit. You just need like a pure, we need an actual number one scoring option. It's like, you know what? That would make some sense.
I like the idea of Kelsey Plum. I like the idea of Kelsey Plum and the Golden State Valkyries. If I'm the Golden State Valkyries, we are the 3 seed, one game out of the 1 seed. Mm-hmm. We can deal with that later.
I mean, look, the talks are heating up. Kelsey Plum, you're either going to lose her in the offseason for nothing, or you can get something, you can get assets for her now. I don't see
are actually heading. Kelsey Plum is currently operating on an expiring contract. This is the single most critical financial detail in this entire equation, and it is the detail that changes everything about how the Sparks front office is forced to calculate their next moves. If Plum reaches the end of her current contract without either re-signing or being traded, the Sparks receive absolutely nothing in return for one of the most valuable assets in their roster inventory. They walk away from the table empty-handed while losing a player who carries enormous market value and trade appeal across the entire league. From a pure asset management perspective, that outcome is completely unacceptable. And the Sparks front office, whatever turmoil it has experienced at the general manager level in recent months, understands basic asset management principles clearly enough to recognize that allowing Plum to simply walk without compensation would be a catastrophic mismanagement of organizational resources. But the trade conversation goes far beyond simply not wanting to lose an asset for nothing. The deeper and far more strategically significant dimension of this situation is what trading Plum actually unlocks for the Sparks in terms of future building capability. When you trade an expiring contract attached to a player of Plum's profile and production, you do not simply receive draft compensation or young players in return. You receive picks, you receive assets, you receive the building blocks of future roster construction. And in the specific context of what the Sparks are trying to accomplish over the next several years, those assets are not just valuable, they are absolutely essential. Consider this specific framework. Multiple analysts and insiders have identified the Golden State Valkyries as perhaps the most logical and mutually beneficial trade partner for a Kelsey Plum deal. The Valkyries are currently operating as a genuine playoff contender. They are built around an incredibly well-constructed roster of defensive athletes, versatile wings, and high IQ players, but they have a clearly identifiable need for a true number one offensive option.
So we'll see
a player who can create their own shot, manufacture offense in isolation, and be the person the organization turns to when they need a bucket with the game on the line. Kelsey Plum fits that profile almost perfectly. She is a proven scorer with championship experience and the kind of offensive creation ability that can immediately elevate a roster that already has all the complementary pieces in place. A Plum trade to Golden State makes basketball sense on multiple levels. It gives the Valkyries the offensive weapon they need to make a genuine championship run. And it gives the Sparks exactly the type of draft pick ammunition and young asset package that would be necessary to execute larger future moves. One specific name that has been floated in these conversations deserves particular attention. The idea that the Sparks could use acquired picks and assets from a Plum trade to eventually position themselves in a negotiation involving Caitlyn Clark is not as far-fetched as it might initially sound to casual observers. It is, in fact, the most logical conclusion of the asset accumulation strategy that the Sparks appear to be actively pursuing. You do not accumulate picks and assets simply for the sake of having them. You accumulate them because you have identified a specific target that requires significant organizational resource commitment to acquire. And when you overlay the Sparks' apparent asset accumulation strategy with the widely discussed narrative around Clark's long-term future, the picture that emerges is anything but coincidental.
Friend of mine, and I care about her, and this is the hard part in sports, right? But right now I'm just, focused on the team.
Sense of urgency kind of heightened, or has it already been kind of there already?
Like, what do you mean?
The sense of urgency of like.
I mean, we've had the sense of urgency all season. We've had just peaks and valleys with how we've played and who we've had active and injured and stuff. But I feel like we're playing.
Now, Lynn Roberts, she understands the pressure is on her as a coach because there's no guarantee that you're gonna like make it. There's no guarantee that this ownership group is gonna keep you around. The ownership group may be scouring around for a coach that already has a great relationship with Caitlyn Clark. They're gonna be looking to make a partnership. And I think, listen, man, things are happening behind the scenes. I 100% believe things are happening, and there's a chance that this thing could take a turn. Okay, this is courtesy of ESPN. It says the Sparks, they missed the playoffs the last 5 seasons and are currently 10-11, just out of playoff in 9th place. They're coming off consecutive victories, though, having defeated Indiana Wednesday and Chicago on Friday. It says the assistant GMs will take over. Okay. And this thing is
incidental.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Los Angeles. You cannot fully understand the current state of the Los Angeles Sparks organization without examining the front office shakeup that has been unfolding in recent weeks. The firing of the Sparks general manager did not happen in a vacuum. It did not happen simply because the team has struggled on the court. Front office leadership changes of this magnitude are almost never about win-loss records alone. They are about philosophical disagreement. They are about organizational direction. They are about the ownership group deciding that the current management structure is not equipped to execute the vision that ownership has defined for the franchise's future. The specific decisions made by the now-departed GM tell a story about organizational dysfunction that goes beyond simple personnel mistakes. Trading away Sarah Ashley Barker, a top 10 drafted player who is visibly developing into a legitimate starter-level contributor, was a decision that the basketball community has scrutinized heavily. Barker is now a starting caliber player in Portland, delivering exactly the kind of production that the Sparks desperately needed her to provide. Losing a developing asset of that caliber for minimal return represents the kind of short-sighted roster management that ownership groups eventually lose patience with. Similarly, the decision to trade Rakia Jackson represents another instance of the front office failing to properly evaluate and develop the long-term asset value of their own players. Yes, Jackson subsequently suffered a serious injury that complicated her career trajectory. But the principle of trading away a developing player of Jackson's quality for a veteran asset returning minimal long-term value reflects a pattern of decision-making that consistently prioritized short-term roster fixes over sustainable organizational construction. These decisions, viewed individually, are each questionable. Viewed collectively as a pattern, they paint a picture of a front office that was not building toward anything coherent. And when ownership finally decided that enough was enough, they did not simply remove a general manager. They declared through that action that the entire philosophical approach to roster construction was being abandoned in favor of something fundamentally different. The appointment of assistant GMs to manage operations during the transition period is itself a significant signal. It tells you that ownership is not rushing to simply install a replacement with the same organizational philosophy. They are deliberately taking their time because they understand that the next general manager hired will be one of the most consequential personnel decisions the franchise has made in years. They need someone who understands the new direction completely. Someone who has the vision, the relationships, and the strategic capability to execute a rebuilding plan that is specifically designed for the commercial moment the league is currently living through. And that new general manager, whoever they ultimately turn out to be, will inherit a very specific mandate: build the infrastructure, acquire the assets, create the environment, position this franchise to make the moves that matter when the moments that matter arrive. Let us be honest about what Lynn Roberts is currently experiencing as head coach of the Los Angeles Sparks, because honesty is the only framework through which her situation can be properly understood. Roberts is caught in one of the most difficult coaching positions imaginable. She is trying to manage and develop a roster that has been significantly compromised by injury throughout the season. She is operating within an organization that just fired its general manager, creating immediate uncertainty about philosophical direction and organizational stability. She is coaching a team that is sitting just outside the playoff picture despite showing genuine competitive improvement compared to recent seasons. And she is doing all of this while knowing, at some level, that the ownership group may already be evaluating whether her coaching profile is the right fit for the next chapter of this franchise's story. Roberts has made factually accurate points in her public statements. The Sparks did triple their win total from the previous season during her first year as head coach. That is a legitimate, measurable improvement that should not be dismissed simply because the overall record is still not what the organization ultimately needs it to be. Tripling your win total in a single season is meaningful. It reflects genuine competitive development. But the problem for Roberts, and it is a problem that has nothing to do with her coaching capabilities or her basketball knowledge, is that the standard against which she is now being evaluated has fundamentally changed. In the pre-Clark era of the WNBA, steady improvement might be sufficient justification for organizational patience with a developing coaching staff. In the current era, where the commercial opportunity represented by the right franchise positioning is measured in hundreds of millions of dollars of potential revenue, steady improvement is simply not enough. Ownership groups in this era are not just evaluating whether a coach can develop young players or manage a rebuilding roster. They are evaluating whether a coach has the relationships, the system, and the competitive credibility to attract and retain the kind of marquee talent that transforms franchises. And when the marquee talent in question is someone whose commercial profile has redefined the entire economic ceiling of the sport, the evaluation becomes even more pointed. The specific question that Roberts cannot answer publicly, but that ownership is almost certainly asking privately, is straightforward. Is she the coach that a generational superstar would choose to play for? Is she the coach that would make a franchise transformation more likely or less likely? Is her system, her approach, and her existing profile the kind that creates an environment a player of Clark's stature would want to operate within? These are not questions about Roberts' character. They are not questions about her work ethic or her knowledge of the game. They are cold, commercially motivated organizational questions that ownership groups in this era cannot afford to ignore. And the fact that her job security is being discussed openly in the media, and that she herself has been placed in the position of defending her tenure publicly, tells you that at least some portion of the organizational conversation is already happening. Perhaps the most underappreciated and consistently overlooked piece of evidence that the Los Angeles Sparks are engaged in serious, long-term organizational repositioning is the confirmed construction of their new state-of-the-art practice facility in El Segundo, expected to open in 2027. This is not a minor operational upgrade. This is not a cosmetic improvement designed to generate positive media coverage. This is a multi-million-dollar infrastructure investment that signals in the clearest possible organizational terms that ownership is committed to building something sustainable, something competitive, and something capable of attracting and retaining elite talent at the highest level. The timing of this facility investment is worth examining carefully. The Sparks are not building a new practice facility because their current situation demands it for immediate competitive purposes. They are building it because they understand that elite players in the modern sports era evaluate organizational commitment through the lens of infrastructure investment. When a franchise invests in world-class facilities, they are communicating to the players they want to attract that this organization is serious, that it is willing to provide the professional environment that elite athletes deserve, and that it is building towards something meaningful rather than simply maintaining the status quo. Consider this specific detail in the context of the Clark conversation. Clark is currently operating out of the Indiana Fever's newly constructed state-of-the-art facility in Indianapolis. She knows what a world-class professional environment looks and feels like. She has experienced the kind of organizational investment that communicates genuine commitment to player welfare and professional development. For any organization hoping to eventually attract her attention, matching that standard of facility quality is not optional, it is table stakes. The Sparks facility investment says, in the most tangible and financially verifiable way possible, that when 2027 arrives, when that facility opens its doors, they intend to have someone worth building it for playing inside it. That is not speculation. That is organizational logic expressed through capital investment, and capital investment does not lie. To fully appreciate what is potentially developing in Los Angeles, you need to understand the organizational context that exists in Indiana, because the two situations are inextricably linked in a way that the basketball community is only beginning to fully process. The Indiana Fever have, by any objective commercial measurement, experienced the most transformative single season in franchise history since Caitlyn Clark arrived. Television ratings have shattered league records. Ticket demand has reached levels the franchise has never previously experienced. Merchandise sales have generated revenue figures that would have seemed impossible to project just 2 years ago. Clark's presence has not simply improved the Fever. It has completely recalibrated what the franchise is worth, what it is capable of generating commercially, and what its ceiling looks like as a business enterprise. And yet, despite all of this unprecedented commercial success, the relationship between the organization's coaching infrastructure and its most valuable player has shown visible signs of tension throughout the season that neutral observers have noted with increasing frequency. The press conference dynamic alone tells a story worth paying attention to. When Stephanie White addresses questions about Clark's development, about offensive system design, about the team's competitive ceiling, there is a consistent undercurrent of coaching defensiveness that stands in contrast to the kind of enthusiastic championship-building language you would expect from a coach who fully understands the historic opportunity sitting in front of her. This is not an accusation of professional misconduct. It is an observation about organizational alignment, or the potential lack thereof, between a coaching philosophy and the specific needs of a generational offensive talent. Elite players need elite organizational environments. They need coaching staffs that are not simply managing them but actively designing systems around their specific gifts. They need organizations that are willing to say, without apology or qualification, that this player is the center of everything we are building, and every decision we make will reflect that priority. Whether Indiana has communicated that level of unconditional organizational commitment to Clark, whether she feels it, whether she believes it, is something that only she and the people closest to her situation can truly answer. But the external signals, the body language captured on camera, the way certain questions get answered in press settings, and the persistent nature of the trade conversation surrounding her future all point toward a situation that is more complicated beneath the surface than the official narrative suggests. What is absolutely clear is this: Clark has options, she has leverage, and she has demonstrated throughout her professional journey that she is not the kind of athlete who passively accepts organizational situations that do not serve her competitive interests or her broader professional goals. She is an active, engaged participant in shaping her own trajectory. And when the time comes for her to make decisions about her future, those decisions will reflect a comprehensive evaluation of every organizational variable in play. One specific move made by the Los Angeles Sparks deserves particular attention in the context of this larger narrative, and it is a move that has been somewhat underreported relative to its potential strategic significance. The Sparks signed Kate Martin. For those who have followed Clark's career closely from her college days through her professional emergence, The significance of that signing goes far beyond Kate Martin's individual basketball capabilities, which are legitimate and valuable in their own right. Kate Martin is one of Caitlyn Clark's closest friends in the basketball world. Their relationship was forged during their time together at Iowa, and it has remained a meaningful personal and professional connection as both have transitioned to the WNBA. When organizations want to create an environment that is genuinely attractive to a specific player they are targeting, they do not simply build facilities and clear cap space. They build relationships, they build networks, they create the kind of human infrastructure that makes a destination feel like more than just a workplace. They populate their roster with people that their target would genuinely want to play alongside. Signing Kate Martin to the Los Angeles Sparks was either the most coincidental personnel decision in recent WNBA history, or it was a deliberate signal sent in a very specific direction. Given the broader organizational context, given every other move the Sparks are simultaneously making, the probability of pure coincidence deserves extreme skepticism. This is how franchise transformation actually works in the modern sports era. It does not happen in a single dramatic announcement. It happens through a sequence of individually explainable decisions that, viewed together, reveal a coherent and unmistakable organizational intention. The facility investment, the front office reconstruction, the trade conversations around Plum, the coaching evaluation, and the quiet signing of a player who happens to be one of the league's most visible superstars' closest personal connections. Each piece on its own has a surface-level explanation. Together, they form a picture that requires significantly more expansive interpretation. Let us talk about money directly, because the financial dimension of this conversation is ultimately what is driving every single organizational decision being made by the Los Angeles Sparks. And understanding those financial realities is essential to understanding why the organization is willing to make the kind of aggressive, disruptive moves that are currently generating controversy. The WNBA's commercial landscape has been permanently altered by Caitlyn Clark's arrival. This is not hyperbole. This is documented financial reality. Television broadcast deals that were being negotiated during her rookie season were valued at levels that would have been considered completely unattainable prior to her arrival. National television rating records that the league had not approached in decades were shattered during her first year as a professional. Franchise valuations across the league have increased in ways that ownership groups are only beginning to fully account for in their organizational planning. And this commercial transformation is not limited to the Indiana Fever franchise. Every WNBA franchise has benefited from the expanded audience, the increased media attention, and the elevated league profile that Clark's presence has generated. But the franchise that successfully positions itself as Clark's long-term home will experience a commercial benefit that goes far beyond what any other organization in the league can realistically expect to generate. A Los Angeles-based franchise in the nation's second-largest media market, with a superstar whose national commercial appeal already transcends traditional basketball audiences, would represent a commercial proposition unlike anything the league has previously seen. The sponsorship revenue, the local broadcast deals, the merchandise sales, the ticket revenue, and the franchise valuation implications would collectively represent a financial transformation measured not in millions, but in hundreds of millions of dollars over a sustained period. This is why the Sparks are willing to trade franchise-caliber players to clear assets. This is why they are investing in a new state-of-the-art facility they will not open for 2 more years. This is why they are restructuring their entire front office from the ground up rather than simply making incremental adjustments at the margins. The financial mathematics of what is potentially available to them if they successfully execute this organizational transformation are so compelling that aggressive, disruptive action is not just justified, it is organizationally obligatory. You do not passively wait for a historic opportunity to arrive and then scramble to prepare for it after the fact. You build the environment in advance. You invest in the infrastructure. You create the conditions. And then you position yourself to make the decisive move when the moment arrives. The broader competitive landscape of the WNBA also matters enormously in this analysis, because it shapes the specific context within which the Sparks' organizational moves are being made and evaluated. The league is currently experiencing a period of genuine competitive parity at the top. Multiple franchises are operating with legitimate championship aspirations, significant roster depth, and increasingly sophisticated organizational structures. The New York Liberty, the Las Vegas Aces, the Minnesota Lynx, and the Connecticut Sun have all established themselves as genuine championship-caliber organizations in recent seasons. The Seattle Storm remains a historically relevant franchise with a sustainable winning culture. And now the Golden State Valkyries are emerging as a genuine competitive force in only their first season of existence. This competitive landscape is significant for the Sparks' strategic planning because it means that simply becoming competitive is no longer a sufficient organizational goal. In a league with multiple genuine championship-caliber organizations, simply making the playoffs or reaching the second round does not generate the kind of commercial differentiation that transforms a franchise's trajectory. You need something more. You need a defining organizational identity. You need a superstar whose presence elevates everything around them to a level that commands national attention and sustained commercial engagement. The franchises that are currently winning championships are doing so because they have built organizational cultures around specific competitive identities. The Liberty have built around defensive versatility and offensive depth. The Aces built their dynasty around elite frontcourt talent and system mastery. The Lynx have sustained excellence through developmental consistency and coaching stability. But none of these franchise identities, as successful as they are on the court, carries the specific commercial profile that Clark's presence would generate for a Los Angeles-based franchise operating in the nation's largest West Coast media market. The basketball case and the business case converge in a way that makes the strategic logic of the Sparks' organizational direction almost impossible to argue against from a purely rational perspective. The decisions that are made in the coming weeks and months by multiple organizations, the Los Angeles Sparks, the Indiana Fever, league leadership, and Caitlyn Clark herself, will collectively define the next major chapter of women's professional basketball history. And each of those decisions carries consequences that extend far beyond the immediate organizational context in which they are being made. For the Sparks, the immediate priority is completing the front office reconstruction with the right general manager appointment. The individual they hire to lead their basketball operations will either validate the ambitious organizational vision being pursued or reveal that the vision was never as coherent as the individual moves suggested. The right hire is someone who combines genuine basketball evaluation credibility with sophisticated understanding of the commercial dynamics that define success in the current WNBA environment. Someone who can build competitive rosters while simultaneously understanding the cultural and commercial dimensions that make certain organizational destinations more attractive to elite talent than others. The coaching evaluation is equally critical. Whatever decision ownership makes regarding Lynn Roberts, it must be made with complete clarity about what kind of coaching profile is best suited to the organizational direction being pursued. If the franchise is rebuilding around the possibility of attracting a generational talent, then the coaching hire that follows needs to be someone whose profile, system, and professional reputation are genuinely compelling to exactly that kind of player. That might mean Roberts continues her development within the organization. It might mean someone new is brought in whose profile is specifically suited to the next chapter. But the decision needs to be driven by organizational strategy rather than simply by short-term performance evaluation. The Plum trade situation will likely resolve itself naturally based on deadline dynamics and what offers materialize from interested organizations. But how the Sparks navigate that specific transaction, what they prioritize, what assets they insist upon, and how they communicate the organizational reasoning behind the move, will tell the basketball community a great deal about the sophistication of their current front office thinking and the coherence of their longer-term strategy. For Indiana, the decisions around Clark's organizational experience, her contract future, and the competitive infrastructure being built around her will determine whether the Fever can successfully retain the most commercially valuable player in their franchise's history when free agency conversations eventually arrive.
Don't forget
Coaching dynamic, the front office investment, the organizational communication, all of it matters, and none of it can be managed through press conference diplomacy alone. It has to be felt by the player at the center of it, experienced in her daily professional life, and reflected in the organizational decisions that actually get made. And for Clark herself, the watching world will pay attention to every signal, every public statement, every reported private conversation, and every organizational alignment or misalignment that becomes visible to outside observers. She is navigating these waters with the combination of competitive focus and strategic awareness that has characterized her approach to her professional journey from the beginning. Whatever decisions she ultimately makes about her future will be driven by a comprehensive, clear-eyed evaluation of her own competitive goals, her personal values, and her understanding of what organizational environments best position her to achieve everything she is capable of achieving. What the Los Angeles Sparks are building right now is not simply a roster reconstruction. It is not simply a front office realignment. It is not simply a facility investment or a coaching evaluation or a trade conversation about an expiring contract. It is the deliberate, systematic construction of an empire designed for a specific moment in sports history. A moment when the right player in the right city, with the right organizational infrastructure surrounding her, could generate something that transcends basketball entirely and becomes a permanent cultural landmark in the history of women's sports. Every move being made right now is a piece of that design. Every asset being acquired, every executive decision being made, every facility dollar being invested, and every relationship being quietly cultivated is part of a blueprint that is more coherent and more deliberately engineered than the chaos of the current moment might suggest. The question is not whether the Los Angeles Sparks are serious about this transformation. The evidence answers that question definitively. The question is whether the rest of the basketball world, and one specific player in particular, is ready to believe what the evidence is clearly showing them. Because in Los Angeles, the foundation is being laid, and foundations do not wait forever.